Right, so before we get started, we have got some very happy memories from the World Cup. We do have to talk about the awful news about Paul O'Connell being out of the World Cup. Brian, we haven't really had a chance to talk to you about his career because that's kind of, the news came through and it's like he's going to miss the tournament. And then the next day, everybody starts to think about how much of an icon he's been and how important he's been to Irish rugby. You've had a day or two to think about that. Just, is it possible to understand, for us to understand?
Um, it is in that we've seen his rise from, I think 2002 he got capped, try scoring debut that he doesn't remember, got concussed, but just from there he grew as a player so quickly and as a leader so quickly, and he became someone that was obviously vital to Munster's cause, but absolutely vital to Ireland's cause as well. And through any of the success of our Triple Crowns, and then finally winning the Grand Slam and then captaining the back-to-back Six Nations titles the last 2 years, he's been he had a pivotal role in all of that as a player, but probably more so as a leader of galvanising his pack and getting his pack playing better than maybe their ability belies.
See, this is the thing, right? We can bring in Henderson, and on the field, in every individual moment of the game, you'll think, oh, actually, Henderson, it's quite close. It's almost exactly the same. But it's the other stuff that we don't have a clue about.
It's during the week. That's the stuff where where the mentality is set and where attitudes are made or broken. And it's guys saying the right things at the right time. And he's not someone now that has to bark an awful lot or shout at guys. It's just he picks his moments to say things. And I was obviously captain of Ireland for a number of years when he was vice captain, and then the last couple of years he was captain, and I assumed a leadership role. And I suppose in both circumstances you try and help one another out. If the captain is doing less talking, it means the team is in a good place.
Yeah.
That he isn't forced into having to speak because everyone's silent. When Woody was captain, he was, and I'm not slagging him about this, he was largely the only voice because everyone was quiet. Now, Woody does like the sound of his own voice too, so it worked both ways. But
I haven't got a word in yet.
but he didn't. He didn't have the same team of leaders that we had throughout the 2000s with the Rodges and Dennis Hickeys and Simon Easterby's and these guys. So some of us were luckier than others.
He was only breaking into the Munster team in the one season that you were at Munster, is that right?
Yeah, just about, yeah. And but I played more with him with Ireland than with Munster. And it was funny, when he arrived on the scene in 2002, and he can't remember the game, which isn't funny anymore, but he was so impatient with everything. I mean, he's a total pain in the neck. And he complained about everything in his own little way, and he would press every nerve he possibly could because he was in a rush to do well. And that's something he never really stopped doing. He was always trying to push things a little bit further, a little bit harder, trying to move things along. And I remember we had a conversation driving up for the World Cup in 2003. And he said, geez, Woody, said, aren't we so fit now? Aren't we really, really, really fit? And I said, yeah, we're pretty fit. He said, would we be the fittest team around? And I said, not a chance. I said, England are about 4 years ahead of us. He said, well, why aren't we training harder? Why can't we push it harder? I said, you might be able to take it, Paul. I wouldn't make another couple of weeks. The Claw wouldn't have made the next training session or whatever it was, And the guys it takes a period of time for all that change. But he was impatient and wanted great things immediately when he arrived. And that marks him out because a lot of guys try and bed themselves into a team and try and see where the seniority lies, if it lies anywhere, and what happens. He didn't. He actually wanted to be involved immediately and wasn't shy about saying so,
Yeah, you would have been pushing the scrum behind him, Stephen. You would have seen a lot of his ass over the years. What is it like actually packing down with him?
It's pretty bony. But yeah, look, listen, Brian said about it, he was the pack leader. He was probably my captain, if you know what I mean, on the pitch because he'd done so much talking for the pack, and during line-outs, scrums, he was always the voice there. And he was just such a great man. And he's the type of guy that you love to play for. Just respected him so much. And it's just a pity that it's all come to a head the way it has. But knowing Paul, he'll be up for the challenge of getting himself fit and getting himself back playing rugby, hopefully in too long. But it was brilliant playing alongside him.
What was it like to play against him then? Because obviously you know each other so well, and there seems to be this, we can actually kill each other here and we'll have to forgive each other in a way that, you know, you can't do with people you genuinely hate.
I love playing against him because he was the best, and I like to test myself against the best. And you're always testing yourself when you played against Paul O'Connell, and every time we played against Munster, it was always going to be tough, but he was the one that made it tough. If he wasn't playing, you were rubbing your hands before the match, and he just brought a physicality and, you know, something that's probably been lacked within Munster in the last couple of years, and he's hopefully going to kick on too long, but he was a beast to play against. But I loved it. Even that quarter-final, when I walked out with the man of the match trophy and looked him in the eyes, he was just looking at me going, "That's supposed to be mine," you know. And that's just him. He always wants to be the best, and he doesn't settle for second best. So yeah, it was always good to play against him.
Eddie, we hear so much about his brain power in the video room and in terms of deconstructing the opposition's line out. At what point did he get good at that, and at what point do you kind of go, oh, this is brilliant, we have an extra resource here?
Well, he was always analytical in his view of the game, and he was always going for the edge. You know, how could we find a trigger in the opposition and how they set up? We could pick off a few lineouts. But he grew into the what I call like a master tactician at that. You know, so when he was on the field, you never, like for a coach, there's so many bits and pieces before a game. There's a scrum, the lineout, defence, continuity. And they're all come together, and it's either a good performance or bad performance based on how they fit together. And the line-out's a big one, and once he was on the field, you were always relaxed that we were going to make the right calls in the right places at the right time, so we're going to win most of our balls, bar maybe a bad dart from the hooker, but he was always going to make a good decision. And in that time, remember, the line-out changed. It changed into a completely different animal than it was. You know, the lifting, the movement, it became incredibly technical. And I remember at one stage, Niall O'Donovan was the coach. We had in the region of 250 lineouts. Now, you didn't go out with 250 in a game, but you would have a selection of them, and off those was variation. So
hang on, your playbook is 250 lineouts?
Yeah.
Wow, it's quite a lot to memorize.
Well, you don't memorize 250, but
you had
this is after Woody's time. We dumbed it down for Woody.
Love it.
But in fairness, you didn't use the 250, but they had to be in the locker. Then you picked out your selection. But the key was in the game is knowing which one was appropriate at that moment to win the ball. And it varied on the opposition setup. It varied on the position of the field. The weather was a factor. If it was windy, you could go here, you could go there. And you always relaxed when he was calling it because he was unbelievably accurate. He knew exactly what he wanted. And our line-out strike with him on the field was extraordinary.
So this week, there's some talk that he's going to stay around the camp, but there's also talk that he's going to have surgery pretty quickly. Can he do both? Can he have surgery and be around the camp, or the surgery takes him out of the circulation for a day or two?
Yeah, well, from a surgery point of view, you want to have surgery where you're able to go back and for checkups with minimal ease or with maximum ease.
So that's Ireland.
Going to London or going to France, potentially could go down to somewhere down in Toulon. If there's a good specialist in there that could fix him, if he's going to be spending a lot of time and needing to go back to him, that makes sense. But I don't see how he's going to be able to do the two. He needs to obviously first and foremost focus on him and getting himself right. He's going to want to play again. He's certainly not going to want that to be the end of his playing days, albeit it's a very serious injury. But I would anticipate knowing Paul that when he is right, if he has a few days and he has an opportunity to come back to inspire the players, I'm sure he will, and I know Joe will want him there.
Yeah.
His presence alone there, without saying anything, would inspire you. So of course, please God, if they do push on to the quarter or to the semi-final next weekend, that he has an opportunity to have the operation in the interim and then get back for a few inspirational words.
Because we hear so much, Keith, about his input during the week in terms of what the analysis of the opposition is going to be. I mean, is that something that all the coaches can see anyway, or is there actually extra bits that we lose by not having him in the building when they're having those conversations?
You would hope that the coaches would pick up on everything. It isn't just the information, it's how you impart it to the other players around it, and that's one thing he always had, was he was very clinical. And Eddie mentioned about him calling the lineouts. I always called the lineouts until Paul came along, and I have to tell you, it was fantastic because he invariably called the call where he thought there was the best chance of winning it. And not just the best chance of winning it, because often the best chance is to win it at the front. If they've stacked the middle and the back, you can win it at the front. But that doesn't fit into the way the team wants to play. So yes, you will throw there sometimes, but he would find the one place, where you could play an expansive game by winning it, and he'd see the little chink in their armoury, and you would throw to there. Now, whether you throw it right or not was entirely another thing, but it just made it an awful lot easier that you had a guy that was just fully in tune with what the team wanted to do. And I suppose that's what you'll miss, because he doesn't have that full sense of it now. But I will say that it's moved on so much more since I played, and in terms of many people carry different roles within it. In times past, it was one or two or three leaders or four, but now there's different guys share different roles, and there's no point coming in to become a young player in Ireland unless you're willing to take on some of those roles. That wouldn't necessarily have happened, but it seems to happen an awful lot more now.
Okay, so we can deal with the loss because we have players.
We don't have a choice but to deal with it,
Well, that's like the game will happen, but we're going to survive.
You're always going to be worse off for losing a player like Paul O'Connell. That's the way of the world. That's talent and ability above all else. So he's gone. So we have to now have a coping mechanism, which is the squad, which is guys stepping up to the plate, which is Ian Henderson coming in and playing a great half last weekend, which is Dev Toner now calling all lineouts. He actually calls a lot of stuff himself anyway.
Okay.
It's handy when you're 6'10", and you know that if you get up in the air, there's a good chance you're going to win it if the ball's thrown in the right place. And then, other roles. Jamie Heaslip is going to have a massive role as the new captain, but also being the only back rower that remains from last weekend. So we need a lot of guys to take ownership and take some of what Paulie would have given the squad.
One thing that Paul expects from his players around him are standards. And in training, you talked about, Eddie, about those 250 lineouts. If you get one of those 250 lineouts wrong, it's not good enough in Paul's eyes. And the players around him will have learned so much off him, not only the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but the last few years. And I think that's why the guys come on and done such a good job in the second half, because they're learning from the master. They've learned from the master for the last number of years. And, there's no better man than Devin Toner to step in and call the lineouts. And I expect him to still go well this week.